Mayor Baker.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Van Ness.
Here.
Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Sperry.
Here.
Councilmember Curtis.
Present.
Councilmember Herbig.
Here.
Councilmember Danuski. Thank you.
I'm not really sure how to address you, Mrs. Quinn. Anyway, if you would be so kind to lead us in the in the flag salute, I'd really appreciate it. Would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did it right.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, the agenda will stand approved as written. And we're changing things up a little bit tonight. We're going to do a couple of things out of order here. And we're going to go to citizen comments because we felt that it was important for you to speak. I would ask that this is a city council meeting, and please address your comments, whatever, to the council. And with that, this is an opportunity to express your views on issues that are important to you and to the community, and we ask that you do your best to limit your comments to 3 minutes. People do work to do that, and there is a timer over there. And this is not a time for two-way dialogue. If answers are needed, city staff will provide those answers in writing to you in a timely period. So will the clerk please call the first person?
Carol Galat.
Hi. Okay. I'm Carol Gillette, and my family and I have lived in Kenmore for the last 11 years.
Could you state your address, please?
7208 Northeast 190th Court.
Thank you.
I wish to speak tonight with regards to the proposed new school feeder pattern and how it affects my family. I don't support the decision to split the Kenmore elementary community between separate high schools. Before I get started, though, I'd like to thank both the North Shore School representatives for being here tonight and to the City Council for keeping an open mind and considering the comments of its citizens. For perspective, when we moved from Alaska 11 years ago, out of all the communities we could have moved to, we chose our house in Kenmore for two simple reasons: the opportunity for our children to attend the academically rigorous Inglemoor and to be near the proposed downtown area in Kenmore, which was supposed to be imminent. Now, as a parent to 4 children who will be affected by the proposal put forth by the EDTF, that's the Enrollment Demographic Task Force, and as PTA co-president at Kenmore Elementary, I have a vested interest in advocating for our little school. Personally, removing us from the Inglemoor feeding pattern forces us to make an unwarranted change and hurts our property value and completely undermines the roots and network of friends that we have made here over the last 11 years. We have stayed loyal to Kenmore Elementary because we know there is more to a school than just rankings, and it's the diversity that Kenmore Elementary offers that appeals to us. We also wanted our kids to have the opportunity for them to go to high school with the same kids that they went to kindergarten with. Regardless of the academic parity between the two high schools, what Inglemoor will have that Bothell will not is my children's best friends who happen to have the advantage of living a few blocks west. I want to know that if Susie sees my son doing something he shouldn't at school, that her mom knows me well enough to make that phone call. More importantly, I want to know that my son, who is a highly functional on the autism spectrum, who would otherwise have a target on his back, is surrounded by his peers who have known him since kindergarten and who will watch his back for him. Quite simply, I've read through every piece of publicly available information with regards to the new boundaries, and it still makes no sense to me to split up a cohort at the only school-wide Title I program in the district, especially since the decision seems unsupported by the school district's own data. I've already passed on my comments regarding the proposal to the school district, but I'd like to share my thoughts on it with you tonight. As you are probably aware, Kenmore Elementary has the most socially economic challenged and at-risk students in the district. Aside from splitting the school in general, not all of the low-income, ESL, or otherwise at-risk Kenmore Elementary families are captured by the proposed Inglemore boundary. By allowing all of the Kenmore Elementary families to attend Inglemore, it improves social justice through truly equal education opportunities, regardless of race or socioeconomic status, since Inglemore is an academically more rigorous school, and it provides a strong and consistent system of family and community support from kindergarten through high school. Research has shown that ninth grade is a pivotal year that sets the stage for adjustment and achievement for students for their entire high school career. It has been demonstrated that students at risk of not graduating on time or dropping out feel significantly less connected to school than other students. Splitting a cohort is frowned upon because it basically undermines a student's connectivity with the school, it's alienating, and it destroys the very fibers of the networks and friendships that have been built. Given that Kenmore Elementary has the most at-risk students in the district, why undermine a student's success and social support unnecessarily? Second, the EDTF objective of keeping cohorts together and minimizing the transport, especially along 522, is inconsistent in how it's being applied to the various schools. For example, only 2 elementary schools in the district will be split up at high school, Crystal Springs and Kenmore Elementary. Yet, because keeping a cohort is so important, the task force has proposed that the district bus 40 kids just south of Beardsley Avenue across 522 and 405 to Woodmore, then to North Shore Middle School, then to Inglemore. That's 14 years of excessive busing across 2 highways, each 3 to 4 miles one way, when Bothell High School is a mile away. Yet it is perfectly acceptable to split the Kenmore Elementary cohort and keep them from attending their neighborhood high school. This leads me to my most relevant point. Based on the EDTF data, there appear to be enough spaces for the roughly 200 students at Kenmore Elementary who are being redirected to Bothell. Relative to the rest of the district, projected growth in this area is minimal. The district is projecting only 1,300 students to be enrolled at Inglemore in 2017, which means that there are about 558 more spots before they hit their ideal capacity. Artificially reducing enrollment at Inglemore by splitting up Kenmore Elementary just so many of those same students can waiver in under the IB program, maybe, is simply putting the burden of transportation on those families. A waiver into Inglemore is only meaningful if you can provide transport or live near a bus stop on a route that has space. So what do I want from my city council? I want you to advocate for your citizens, and I want you to write a letter of non-support to the district as the EDTF proposal now stands. I want you to probe through the data to ensure that every student in Kenmore is given a fair hand and the same educational opportunities as their classmate that lives across town or 2 blocks away. I want you to ensure that families who move to Kenmore so that their kids could attend Inglemore can still do so without having to rely on a waiver. I want you to see that this is unjust and unfair to our school community. A community, it's worth noting, that is less likely to advocate for itself due to its socioeconomic diversity than another, more affluent and well-educated one might. I want you to recognize that it is just as unacceptable to split a cohort at Kenmore Elementary as it would be at Woodmore or Morelands or Arrowhead. The district is fully prepared for disgruntled parents, and they will do their best to try to convince us that Bothell High School is just as good as Inglemore. However, Inglemore sells houses in this area. It's what Kenmore identifies with as its high school, it's what we bought into, and it's where Kenmore kids need to go together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dwight.
Ian Anderson.
Hi, my name is Ann Anderson at 16304 81st Place Northeast. And it's an honor for me to be here. I've lived here now 3 years, but I've read your bios, and I like how you all live here and have a history here, and you've seen all the changes in Kenmore, and also how you have a vested future interest in the future. I care a lot about Kenmore. I love Kenmore. I love the trees, how it's walkable, how it's bikeable, the parks. You know, I did a lot of research and I brought my family here. But I need your help in protecting Kenmore trees. I planted 35 new trees in my yard, and so I've learned a lot about trees. And I walk around with my family, and we see the new developments, and I count trees. And I know the permit is 6 houses per acre, and that they need to replant 30 units per acre. But I found that I think we need to rethink what we count as trees, and I see a lot of emeralds, green, arborvitae, and that's ARBORVITAE. And I can assume, okay, so they're a maximum of 12 to 15 feet and the width of 3 feet. And I can assume so it's a privacy tree, and it's like a large bush. And I can assume it's more profit for the builder if they pick a cheaper tree and leave less green space. I've counted, and and they're not replanting 30 new trees. And I'm asking if we could stop and raise the bar for the minimum green space and replacement tree quality. If we can set a standard of a tree that can stand the test of time, that's built to last, like that we want to see Kenmore in 100 years. So we need to set a higher standard for replacement trees. And I was hoping that you could help me in working with developers. And then also, I got a permit 2 weeks ago, and I responded to the city planner on it's the North Shore Ridge PLP 2014-066. And I've been talking with the county, and they said it falls back on you if we overdevelop areas in landslide hazards or areas that are prone to erosion. So I have a colored map I printed out. So the area, the 2 acre land, the 2 acre plot is in a landslide area, erosion prone area. So if we can make sure we cross check so that we can avoid landslides in the near future, in the next 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson.
Would you like a copy of the map, or?
I would.
You can give it to the
Okay,
clerk.
thanks.
Aileen Hammer.
Eileen Hammer, 6511 Northeast 192nd Place here in Kenmore. I'm actually here tonight representing my daughter, who couldn't be here and asked me to come. So I have a letter written by her, if it's okay to read it to you. Dear City Council, my name is Fiona Hammer, and I'm in 6th grade at Kenmore Elementary. I can't be at the City Council meeting tonight because I have lacrosse practice and homework. I do want you to know that I am concerned about the changes that may come to my school district in 2017. My class will be the first group to go to 9th grade in high school. With the current plan, I will not go to school with many of my close friends. We are all very surprised, and I am sending this letter tonight to make sure that the views of the students are heard. We want to stay together, like the majority of our peers in the school district. We are close-knit here in Kenmore, and that support matters. It is important to us. Splitting us up is not best for our success when we go to high school. Thank you for listening to the opinions of Kenmore kids. From Fiona.
Thank you, Mrs. Hammer.
Jen Pearson.
Tell your daughter she did a fabulous job.
Jen Pearson.
Hi. I thought I was just signing in for the meeting. I didn't know I was going to speak.
We don't take attendance.
Sorry. So I moved here a couple of years ago.
So I need your name and address, please.
Sorry,
for the
Jen
record.
Pearson, 7309 Northeast 204th Place. I moved here several years ago. One of the only reasons we looked at Kenmore was because of the high school, and we've fallen in love with the community because through the school it is such a great community, and we're disappointed in the fact that we are probably going to be split from a lot of the friends that my kids have made. So it's affecting us at just the community level. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson.
John and Fran Erskine.
Hi, Council. I'm Fran Erskine. This is my husband, John Erskine. We live at 7513 Northeast 195th Street. We've been living in Kenmore for 14 years. We moved here basically to have a community life in Kenmore, knowing that our children would go to Inglemoor High School was very important to us. I am a CPA, and I find many members, fellow CPAs that have gone to Inglemoor and are quite successful, so I'm always very impressed with the graduates that go to the school. My daughter Kate is here today, and she is one of the cohorts. I can't speak as eloquently as Carol Gillette, but she's one of the children that also is very good friends with Carol's son, Miles, and they are a very tight-knit community, and it will be very difficult if eventually they do get split up. I would say that I wonder if the council's considered, or if the community's considered, whether or not minorities have been accounted for. I've looked at the numbers, and it looks like Bothell has fewer minorities, but only by a small percentage. And I would be concerned, based upon the division of lines, which seems to be based upon a little bit of a difference in economic status in the community, that there would be more students of minority status going to a school that has less academic accolades than does Inglemoor.
Thank you. I agree.
And I would also see if my daughter Kate would like to add anything to what I've said.
I'm just really upset that I won't be able to go to
Come up, Kate.
I didn't know I was going to talk, but I'm really upset that I'm not going to get to go to school with many of my friends, and I think it's kind of unfair. It's just, it's a little ridiculous that it's kind of unexpected, and we're all kind of just thinking that it's kind of crazy. I don't think it's good, and that's really all I have to say.
Could you tell us your name?
My name is Kate Erskine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Erskine.
Mark Miller.
My name is Mark Miller. I live at 7519 Northeast 204th Place. And I just wanted to add my voice to the chorus of parents who raising kids. Excuse me. We're actually zoned for Shelton View currently, but under the new design, we're going to be relocated to Kenmore. So already my kids are going to end up going to two different elementary schools. I understand the need to adjust boundaries as the community grows, but splitting the Kenmore cohort as they go through the education process and splitting them in the pivotal years entering high school just seems ill-advised and doesn't seem to be supported by the research that's included in the EDTF documentation. So I just want to put my weight behind Carol's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Rick Lawler.
Council members, I live at 18551 63rd Avenue Northeast. I'm actually a neighbor of Alan Van Ness. I want to support Carol's...
Could you state your name, please?
Richard Lawler.
Thank you.
I want to support Carol's remarks. I also want the council members to think about the economics that could take place by separating these schools. Right now, I know a lot of individuals, and I'm not affected. Actually, my kids get to go to Inglemoor. But I coach a soccer team that's going to be split in half. They're sitting in second grade right now. They'll be split right down the middle. And it's a shame. I don't know why this is taking place. I don't know if it's because it's a new high school, but it's going to impact a lot of individuals, and a lot of individuals in this community. It's going to impact our economics. And that's something that we should actually all bear in mind. Because I have no problem getting up and moving out of the community. And I know a lot of other members do too. They'll move into different areas, which therefore could actually have an impact on how this community's economics play out. So I'd like to just support Carol's comments, and I'd like us as a council member to actually explore this further to understand really the impacts that it has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawler.
There's no one else signed up.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? Thank you for your comments. Mrs. Gillette, Mrs. Hammer, Ms. Pearson, Ms. Erskine, Mr. Miller, Mr. Lawler. Thank you all for your comments on the schools tonight. We really appreciate hearing that. I think we also have some interest and concerns in this also. Mrs. Anderson, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Planning Commission is doing something with tree ordinance this year. Am I mistaken?
Yeah, that's correct. It doesn't hit what she's talking about right on the head, but we'd be happy to meet with her and get her ideas and talk to her about the existing code.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you again for your comments. So, next item on the agenda is North Shore School District proposed boundary adjustments. Thank you guys very much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to be here tonight. I'm Larry Francois. I'm the superintendent of the North Shore School District. I want to just introduce some of the folks who are here with me this evening. At the far end is Katrina Rose. She is a Kenmore resident, I think familiar to many of you here, and she's also a member of our Enrollment Demographics Task Force, a citizen member of that committee, as well as the smaller subcommittee of the Enrollment Demographics Task Force that's done most of the heavy lifting around the proposed boundary plan. Next to her is Ryan Fujiwara, Executive Director of Support Services. Ryan will lead most of our presentation here in a moment. As you know, I'm School Board President Janet Quinn, also a Kenmore resident, and Doug Wilson, who supports the Enrollment Demographic Task Force and will be here doing tech support and anything else we may need him to do tonight. I want to say it was about 18 months ago we were here. We had a joint session with the City Council, and at that time we were talking about our explosive enrollment growth that we were seeing in the north end of the district. We currently have about 5 elementary schools where we don't even have enough room for the kindergartners at those schools to attend there. They're being bused off to other schools, and at that time we were gearing up for our bond measure that our community graciously supported last February, and we're now under construction for a new high school, a 4th comprehensive high school in the north end of the school district, North Creek. And that new high school was part of a 3-legged plan. One was a new high school. The second component was grade reconfiguration, moving our 6th graders up to middle school and our 9th graders up to high school, and the instructional benefits of that. And then the third leg were boundary adjustments. And so we're here tonight kind of talking about that third leg. So certainly understand the concerns around boundary adjustments. It would be almost disheartening if communities weren't upset about the prospects of potentially being moved to a different school community, because we work very hard to build community amongst all of our schools. We certainly understand the concerns that the council may have, as well as affected citizens. Our goal tonight is to really sort of paint the broader picture of what we're facing district-wide and how it may specifically impact Kenmore. And we've got a lot of information to share. We're going to move through it as quickly as we can, and we certainly welcome any questions that you may have along the way. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, I believe, who's going to lead the bulk of this part of the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Oh. Did it go to
And
sleep?
if we can get the lamp on. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, it's on.
So thank you. I think one of the things that we wanted to share is just the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity for sharing a little bit of our story. I think it's really important to understand some of the bigger challenges we have in the district. It's also
Excuse
important.
me, is your microphone turned on? The
I
button
believe.
up?
Button needs to be up. Yeah, it looks
Is the button up?
Yeah, the button's up. Yeah.
All right. So a couple things we just want to share with you a little bit is the context of North Shore. North Shore is somewhat unique with the number of cities and counties we have in our district, but also more importantly the urban growth boundary that crosses county. Wanted to share a little bit of what's happening out there in our district from a construction perspective, as far as some of our enrollment trends that we're starting to see, as well as our demographics. Okay. We'll also share a little bit of our current members and understand that the EDTF was really established in 2001, so we've been looking at data trends and making small adjustments over the last 14, 15 years. We'll also review a little bit of our consideration themes and assumptions. We'll share a little bit of our modeling, estimated impacts, and then our draft recommendations. Okay. So as I shared earlier, I think one of the things that's one of the challenges that we have in North Shore is we're divided into two counties, King and Snohomish County, as you can see across as the horizontal line. And then your vertical line, your vertical dotted line that's moving north and south is the urban growth boundaries. Okay. Now we overlay on top of the counties our 5 cities. So this is sort of the 5 cities that we're incorporating in our district, as well as the unincorporated and unincorporated King and Snohomish counties. So this is just sort of a rough timeline of when high schools were open, or some of our schools. As you can see, the 50s, Bothell High School, 60s, Kenmore High School. In the 70s, in the good old 70s, we didn't build a high school then. In the 80s, we built Woodinville High School, and the urban growth line was established in 1990, with our last school being built as Timbercrest Junior High in 1997. Okay. So one of the things that we tend to look at as part of our projections is birth forecast. And the data that we're showing you today is pretty relevant as far as what we continue to assess each year. So for your first 10 years, from 96 to 2005, if you look at your births, there was about 30,000 births, somewhat consistent. We had a little bit of boom somewhere in 2006 and 2013. And as you can see, the forecast for 2014 and beyond looks like it's going to continue to grow. Okay. We also know that over the last 4 years, regionally, all school districts has grown, and especially on the 405 corridor or some of your major corridors. If you look at North Shore, we've grown roughly about 1,200 students in the last 4 years. Right? That would be roughly about 2.5 elementary schools. Okay? We also know that since 2006, we had a slight dip in the housing market, but as you can see, it's starting to grow a bit. We're not quite sure about 2013 as we look at the data, but that's an anomaly that we're seeing. What we're typically seeing today is really strong home sales. Okay. Also, what we know today is today, as of October 2014, we are at our peak of our headcount, student headcount. So as you can see, the district sort of grew in the early 90s, flattened out somewhere around 2000, did a little bit of a dip in late 2000, and then the last 3 or 4 years we've continued to grow at a pretty good pace. Okay. We also know that the last 4 years has been our biggest enrollment as far as kindergarten students, and we know at some point they're going to be coming through the pipeline. Okay. So some of the short and midterms things that we've implemented just through EDTF. We've utilized all spaces that we currently have at the elementary level. Right now, I believe we've closed 16 of our 20 elementary schools. So no waivers, everything's locked down. The only place that you can really, if you want a waiver, is going to be east, which is our Cottage Lake, East Ridge schools. We also know that we've adjusted our waiver policies, that our waiver policies are now on a 1-year basis. Before, they used to be based on a period of time. We also know that we had to move many of our programs out. So as Larry shared, in our North End schools, some of our major programs, our kindergarten programs, are now being relocated at schools that has some capacity. We've also capped full-day kindergartens. We've moved existing portables out from some of our east side schools into our sort of north central corridor. And more importantly, over the last 2.5 years, we've installed probably 40 portables, which is about 2.5 to 3 elementary schools. Okay. The last thing we looked at is now looking at some leased space, and we're considering that as our primary center for 3 or 4 of our big schools that we still need to find a space for our kindergarten programs. Okay, so a little bit of the projections. What we know today, and this is basically what's in the pipeline, again, we're just pulling the data from the 5 jurisdictions and counties that we encompass, that with multifamily homes, we know that we generate roughly 10 students per 100 homes. We have about 2,000 permits in the pipeline today. We also know that for our single-family homes, we have roughly just under 5,000 permits in the pipeline, and they generate somewhere around 50 students per 100 new homes. So just in the pipeline today, what we know, we're going to be expecting somewhere around 1,650 kids. Right? This just illustrates where the development is growing in our district. As you can see, it's only west of the urban growth line, with the majority of our growth happening in the north end or the Snohomish portion of our district. Okay. What we've also tried to illustrate over the next 6 years is the developments in each one of our elementary levels and what high schools they'll be feeding into. As you can see, in our Botha region, Fernwood, Crystal Springs, they're going to be very large as far as the capacity we have for single-family homes. We also know that in Inglemore, Morelands, and Woodmore will also have a large contingent of new homes being built in that area, as well as in our Woodinville High School, Kokanee will have a large contingency of homes being built. Okay. So this was some of the so as we talked about, this was the short and midterm capacity that we have implemented. Now we're sort of moving toward the longer term changes. Part of the longer term changes is adjusting service areas, adjusting feeder patterns, potentially looking at new construction for of our North Creek High School, acquiring additional property as we continue to look at building permanent structures, and potentially looking at new construction in some of our sites we currently own. Okay. So let me share a little bit of the EDTF and some of the processes that we went through. So as you can see, I think the EDTF is made up of both district and community reps. I think what's important in this is that the terms of some of our community reps is 3+ years. So we have some folks in our community reps who's been part of our EDTF committee for the last 6 years. And so they have some type of history of what we've done. Stop laughing. Definitely over a period of time. I think we have some reps that represent our entire community. So we know we have reps from the Woodinville community, Inglemore community, and Botha community. We also know that we have brought in some really good district support or consultants to share good data, demographics, consultants, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we feel like for us, this has been a objective, trying to put a really good of objective people who can really sort through the data and understand sort of what we are trying to do over this period of time. Right. On top of that, we've created a subcommittee to really dive more into the details. And this subcommittee has probably put in over 50+ hours eating a lot of sugar to really look at what's the best way to sort through the data, and how do we draw the lines? That's really the biggest difference. When the line's 1 mile wide, really easy decision. Now put the line behind someone's home and who goes where, that becomes more of a challenge. Okay. Right. The other thing that I think is really important as we look at some of the consideration and themes that we had to use in the subcommittee, we really had to identify some guiding principles for us as we looked at how we're going to draw the boundaries and who goes where. And one of the things that the EDTF really looked at was sort of 4 key considerations. We looked at the instructional considerations, the demographic considerations, operational, and geographic. And each one of these are defined a little bit more in detail that we can share with you. On top of that, we also did a community survey and sent this information out to the community and said, what are we really missing? We need some really good guidelines for us on how we're going to draw the lines and who goes where. And these are some of the themes that came back from the community survey. Okay. In addition, I think one of the things that we had to do is we had to make a few assumptions as we look at some long-term planning. These are our static assumptions that we've made up there, as well as some of our dynamic assumptions. Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. I did have a question because my understanding was that there is a possibility of changing the current school start times. I don't know where that is, and I noticed that was one of the assumptions.
Yeah. So I think when we were looking at this, so we've been working on this probably for the last 18 months. And really, at that time, we didn't know what the decision from the board was, so we had to make an assumption that the start times would stay static. Where are you, Doug?
So if I can just back up a little bit and just interject, I think in your packets, but for some reason not in the slide, is slide 20, which I think is a pretty critical slide. And I apologize that it's not in the presentation, but it really talks about, from the standpoint of drawing the boundaries, some of the primary challenges that we face. So at the elementary level and at the junior high or middle school level, the challenge is really shifting population density from the north to the south and the east. Whereas at the high school level, we're populating a school that's being built in the north end of the district, so the challenge is a bit reversed. We're trying to move population, or cut boundaries to move population up into the north end of the district, and trying to do that in a way where we maintain as much continuity from elementary to middle school to high school as we can. So it's a great puzzle to try and sort through and figure out how to shift one group of students a certain direction and shift another group of students a different direction without causing too much disruption in the process.
Yeah. I think the other challenge, as we talked about, sorry about that, one of the other challenges that we knew we would face is how do you fit 6 middle schools into 4 high schools? And more importantly, how do you sustain that? We know that one middle school will not be able to sustain a high school. So what's the natural split of that? And we knew that from a subcommittee, that would be one of the challenges that we would be having. And we'll show some of that, what it looks like today versus what we're proposing. Okay. I think besides the considerations and themes and assumptions, I think the thing that we really had to educate ourselves on was looking at current head count. So what is our current head count? What is the current roll-up of our head count in 2017 and beyond? More importantly, what is our projected growth? So what are we projecting as far as student growth? And then our building capacity. Every one of our buildings are built just a little bit different, so the capacity is a little bit different. Inglemoor, for example, is your smallest footprint in comparison to your other 3 high schools. And that was because Inglemoor was remodeled in the 90s versus the last 3 high schools are going to be built in the last 10 years. Okay? So that was the one thing that we really had to take a look at. I think the thing that we've been trying to share with our folks is that the draft recommendations are coming from a larger committee. It's coming from a lot of committee members as well as some district staff. We spent many hours really diving into the details and really looked at many different options of moving boundaries or kids, or how do we get kids, as Larry talked about, to the southeast of our district. And some of our options looked at busing. That was one of the options that we looked at. But as we looked back at our themes, we knew that from a community perspective, busing was not an option. We also know that based on the locations of many of our schools, we wanted to keep our school in the boundary that they're going to. And many of our schools are bordering one of our boundaries, either our south boundary or east boundary or west boundary. Okay? We also know that in 2017, this is really just a milestone. We're going to be growing. We know we're going to have changes. We know that there's going to be bigger birth cohorts coming through. We know that there's going to be more housing development coming through. And we know that we're going to have to make some type of change at some point in time. We did this in 2006. We knew that that change in 2006 was about a 5 to 7 year plan. We lucked out that the economic changes took a downturn. And now we're sort of at that place where we are over capacity in many of our schools. We know that we also have two separate issues that we're trying to balance out there. One is the overcrowding in some of our schools. We also know that in parts of our district, we have very low enrollment. So if you look at the schools south or east of the urban growth boundary, we know that we have a lot of capacity in that area. And then the other thing that we're trying to share with the community is that the service area that we change does not always equate the density. So if you look at the density in some of the western part of the UGA versus the eastern part, it may look like Alaska and only have as many people as Alaska. Okay. All right, so here's our draft proposals that we're sharing. Know that 18 of our 20 schools will have some type of impacts at the elementary level. So as you can see, this is our current boundary. We tried to draw the line where our King-Snohomish County line would be, and then the urban growth line. And as we shared, anything east of our urban growth line is really small elementary schools. Anything north of our King-Snohomish line are really large elementary schools. Okay. The goal for us was really looking at how do we continue to move kids south and east to balance up the district. For example, if you look at Fernwood, if we don't do this plan, the projected enrollment at Fernwood is about 1,200 elementary kids. Okay? And as we shared, if you continue to look at just the placement of many of our schools, how do you move kids from in the Crystal Springs service area south without moving them past Crystal Springs? And in essence, it become busing. Okay? And that's what we were trying to avoid. All right? We also know that one of the luxuries we had is we have a district site, the Maltby site, located luckily in the right area. So that's one of the things that we're looking at in the future of how to build additional capacity to offset some of the growth, continued growth that we're seeing in the north end part of our district. We know that at the middle school service areas, 6 of the 6 middle schools will change. So this is our current service area for middle schools. And this is the new change that we'll have. As you can see, we're balancing this up a little bit better between the 7+ and 900 students. and that we know when you add a fourth high school, we'll know we'll have to impact all three of our high schools. So your current service area for Woodinville, Bothell, and Inglemoor. And what's significant about this, if you look at the Woodinville service area, it takes 10 elementaries right now to feed into one high school. The other 10 elementaries are split between Bothell and Inglemoor. 2017 is a transition year, and it's a transition year because at the new high school, it's only going to be a 9-11 grade. Okay. 2018 then normalizes, where it's somewhere about 1,500 students is what we're looking for. Now, what's significant about this is that we are only looking at residents. It doesn't include big programs. So, for example, we know that in IB, there's about, at Inglemoor, there's about 300 to 350 students who attend some of the IB programs that we have out there. Where some of our other programs, we know that the waiver process, we may have about 100 students in the waiver process for some of our specialty programs in the high school level.
So said a different way, we have waivers, students who attend a school other than their resident area school all across our district. But when we look at our 3 existing high schools, right now, Inglemoor's net in that, students who may leave Inglemoor to attend a school elsewhere versus students who come into Inglemoor, is about 200 to 250 students greater than the net at our other schools. And so these numbers here reflect only residents. We presume that that waiver pattern will continue into the future, and so consequently the numbers at the other schools will likely be lower, and Inglemoor's number will be higher when the impact of waivers is laid over the top of that. If that makes sense.
Okay. So this is just another way to show you the estimated impacts at the K-5 elementary. So of your 9,700 kids, we'll probably be moving around 1,100 elementary kids. And at the middle school, of your roughly 5,000 middle school, 6-8, we'll be moving roughly 700 of those kids. Okay. Go ahead, Doug.
Back up just a little bit, if you wouldn't mind. So this gives a more comprehensive view of the 1,100 students at the elementary level, and so you can see on the left-hand side, those would be students current service area, and then in the draft plan, it gives a sense of scale of where those students under the draft plan would be going to, so that what you can hopefully gather from this is when you look district-wide, this is a very large transition that's occurring across our entire district, impacting a great number of school communities.
So the 30 between Kenmore Elementary and Arrowhead, what does that mean?
So that means that there are, let me see if I can find it right there.
Yep.
There are 30 students right now who currently attend Kenmore Elementary who under the K-5, who at Kenmore Elementary that under this proposed plan would transition to Arrowhead Elementary. And likewise, if you look down below, there are 90 students at Shelton View that would be moving to Kenmore Elementary, and approximately 70 from
40 from West Hill to
40
Kenmore.
from West Hill, I'm sorry, who would similarly be coming in to Kenmore under this plan.
What we're not showing on here is some of the projections as we look out to 2021. Right, this is just our current kids that will be impacted in our system today. Okay.
This is a similar look at the junior high impacts. Again, where students are currently attending to where the proposed plan would move them to. Again, much of this tracking the changes that take place at the elementary level.
And then same for your high school. So this is going to be a little bigger change given that we're building a new high school. So it's about 1,600 students that would be moving. As you can see, Bothell High School will be a big one, where roughly about 800 students will be moving from Bothell High School to North Creek. And Inglemoor to Bothell. So as I've shared earlier, one of the challenges that I think the EDTF had was trying to fit 6 middle schools, trying to keep the same feeder pattern into 4 high schools. Right now it's a pretty easy fit. You have 6 junior highs, and so it's pretty easy to just move 2 junior highs into each one of our high school feeder patterns. As you look at the model that we're proposing, it becomes a little bit more challenging in how we split that. And part of the split is the current enrollment that we know today, including any future projected students we know that will be coming down the road or in the pipeline. So part of our recommendation to the school board will be to consider the proposed draft changes. And right now they're in draft. We're going through some community open houses, gathering information and input from the community, and we'll take that back to our committee to process and review. We also know that given some of the continued growth that we're seeing in the north end, that we are going to recommend that we build a new facility on the Maltby site that would be tied to the 2018 bond, and that we continue to further analyze the eastern part of our district, given some of the smaller schools we have, with the following unknowns. 1351 as far as what happens with K3 class size. 1351 is is to reduce class size at the K3 level. We also know that in 2017 we have to implement full-day kindergarten, which was a legislative change. And we also know that in the next 5 to 10 years, both King and Snohomish could move their urban growth line further east of our district. Okay. So as I've shared earlier, we've already done 2 of the open houses at Woodinville and Bothell. We have 3 more, 2 this week, Skyview and Inglemoor, and then we have a 5th one at Woodmore. With a final recommendation, hopefully at least a draft recommendation presented to the board sometime in April.
So the process at this point will be the feedback and input that we're receiving at the open houses will go back to the EDTF. They'll process that and determine if there should be any adjustments in the plan that make sense from that feedback. Obviously, any adjustments have to fit into the system-wide changes that need to take place to meet our needs across the district. That will then get incorporated into a draft recommendation that will formally come to the board in April. And we'll then spend the next year continuing to study enrollment trend data, housing starts, trying to get as smart as we can, as far into the future as we can, about where we see population growth occurring across the district. I wouldn't anticipate, though, that there will be significant changes in the recommendation that comes to the board in April unless there are significant changes in the underlying assumptions that we learn of over the next year that would cause us to rethink those. So there may be some tweaking at the edges, but I wouldn't anticipate that in spring of 2016 there will be a whole different plan than what is presented this April. Our goal and intent, and what the board has approved as a timeline, is they will make a final boundary adjustment. They will approve a final boundary adjustment plan in the spring of 2016, so that as we head into the 2016-17 school year, which will be our last school year before we open up North Creek, implement the boundary adjustments, and implement grade reconfiguration, that everyone in the community has a full year of advance notice of where they will be going with respect to this plan, and we can focus that year on transition planning to both welcome new members into new school communities as well as to gracefully transition members out of school communities into new school communities. And we welcome your questions.
Thank you. Let's go down the line. Councilmember Smith, then Councilmember Curtis.
Well, thank you, first of all, for being here tonight. I know this wasn't a long-term planned event for you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come out and explain this and educate us a little bit. And I think it's a worthwhile process. When I look at the data, it's clear one thing for me. There's no way I have the ability to look at it and say you're wrong or this should be changed or this or that. It's a lot of work, and I see there's a lot of data here, and so I really appreciate the work the EDTF has put into this, because I can see there's a lot here. So because I can't really comment on the data and how that can be manipulated or changed, I just want to talk or have some comments on record with regards to what Inglemoor is to the community, and it's something it's not in the data. It's totally intangible, and part of it rests with the fact that as a city, we've only been a city for 15 years. And when my wife and I moved here in '87, one of the first things we realized is there's no civic center, there's no downtown really Kenmore at the time, and we're slowly getting there. And what this does, it hurts because it tears apart a part of what Kenmore is, and it's something that I just don't have the answer for, and I wish I did, because I could give you something to work on, and I'd love to give you a solution. But I think it's painful because we don't have the history of a Bothell or a Woodinville, where you have these established communities that are more readily identifiable. Inglemoor is identified with Kenmore, and Kenmore really identifies with Inglemoor. And so all I would ask is that as you go forward and you take the comments, if there's anything you can do to consider how that impacts the long-term success for the families and the children that go up through the system to be part of identified with a community, realize that there is some importance there and real value in the health of the child.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Councilmember Curtis.
Mine are just kind of high-level thoughts. I like the fact that your decisions are being made based on data. I like the short and the long-term thinking. I think the process was very deliberative with a lot of community involvement, and it moved from the policy level decisions down to the details. There isn't a perfect solution, and your team has worked really hard to come up with a solution, and it sounds like you're at least listening to the public, and hopefully there will be some room for some minor tweaking, but obviously everything you move here has some consequence somewhere else. Exactly. So thank you for coming out and listening tonight.
Thank you.
Councilmember Danuski.
Hi, I also wanted to say thank you for coming out. I know it means a lot to us, and it means a lot to the community as well. I'm going to be, with everyone. I obviously don't know all the data, and I obviously don't know much of the data, but I've looked at a little, and for the 2017 numbers, it looks like Inglemoor would be at about 1,300 students, which is 61% capacity, where Bothell would be at 1,800 students, which is 81% capacity, which leaves kind of an extra 558 students that, if this data is correct, that may actually, there may be some room at Inglemoor to maybe tweak around the edges of Kenmore Elementary. I know that we've about 200 kids would need to go up that direction. I do a lot of social service with Kenmore Elementary, and I'll just say they've got really strong support systems in their community, especially the Latino and Russian communities, and to kind of break them up at the junior high, I don't think that would be a great thing to do if it's possible to avoid that, especially since out of all the Kenmore Junior High kids, there's only going to be one little tiny pocket now that would go to the high school. So if there's any way that the whole elementary school could feed up that way, I don't know. I'd love it if we could look at that at least.
Thank you. And I would just reiterate again that the 1,300 figure that shows for Inglemore reflects resident area students only. We anticipate that in reality will be a much larger number, since Inglemore currently captures a much larger number of students who choose to wave into the school from outside the attendance area.
Which is about 200, right?
The net difference between waivers in and out at Inglemore compared to Bothell and Woodinville is about 200 to 250 more students who come into Inglemore than leave compared to the other schools.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Again, I echo everybody else. Thanks for sharing all this with us and as a council. And I, too, consider Inglemore to be Kenmore's high school. There's Bothell High School, there's Woodinville High School, and Inglemore is Kenmore High School. And Kenmore Elementary and Kenmore Junior High have funneled into Kenmore High School all these years. And we also at Inglemore have students coming from all the way from English Hill to Inglemore. And why not divert those students that are over there and keep the Kenmore students together? The other question I had was, I think I heard you say there are only 2 elementary schools where the cohort is being split, Kenmore and somebody else. And what's the logic of picking on Kenmore?
Well, he's looking for that. I'll answer the Sunrise question.
Okay.
The English Hill is our Sunrise Elementary. When I first came on the board in 2006, we were in the middle of boundary changes then as well. And we did move Sunrise to Timbercrest and then feeding into Woodinville High School.
Okay.
So that the people that come from that area are wavering into the Inglemore IB program or Inglemore High School.
Okay.
So if you go back to the slides, and first of all, I'd say there's no intent to pick on Kenmore. But if you look at our current configuration, it doesn't have a page number on it, but toward the end of the slide, we currently have a couple of elementary schools, Shelton View and Kokanee, that have similar splits, and it's, I think, simply a function of trying to put an overall plan together. So when you look at the proposed splits, Kenmore, Crystal Springs, and Hollywood Hill, then are 3 elementary schools that would end up as splits in this particular plan. Although Hollywood Hill, while it will split at middle school, those students will then be reunited again back at high school. So no intentional desire to pick on Kenmore in any way. I think it's just the way that the plan has come together.
Yeah. Which school split were basically came down to geography?
Pardon me?
Which school split basically came down to geography, where they were located within the district?
Okay. Yeah, my 2 children, when we were in Arrowhead, left Arrowhead, 28 students out of Arrowhead went to Kenmore Junior High, and all the rest, 6th graders, went to North Shore. They all came back together at Inglemore, though.
Right. Correct.
So they made additional friends and then came back together.
Right.
Councilmember Sperry.
Well, thank you. As you can see, this is an issue, general policy is one thing, but when it affects your family and your street and your relationships that you've developed over time, it's obviously a very dear and painful, thing for some people to have a change. There are a couple of things. One is my personal story. My husband was actually one of the first graduates of Inglemore. He graduated in 1968, and my 2 kids went there too. And when I went I moved around a lot, so I didn't have the time didn't have the chance to develop those long-term relationships. So my husband went to Kenmore Elementary. They moved across to Arrowhead. He went to Kenmore Junior High, and he went to Inglemore. And I went with my husband to these reunions, and 30 years later, they're talking about the Boy Scout troops that they did, and this happened and that happened. And I still run into this people that work at Ostrom. So these are lifelong relationships. And I understand that you have to balance the numbers, but I would urge that if there's some way of not creating that split, in Kenmore Elementary, I think it's really worth it. The other things that you heard a lot here tonight is it is a very unique school. I mean, we think it's the best because it's in Kenmore, but it has a diverse economic situation, and so in a sense, those are the kids who need the support. They need the cohorts, and they need that continuity. So I do appreciate you coming, and I certainly hope that there will be some room to edit that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Herbig.
So it was kind of an offhand remark that I made here 2 weeks ago that got this whole thing going and got you guys out here. I appreciate you coming out here making this presentation. I know it's a little uncomfortable, and I hope we're not making it any worse. I hope that we're being cordial enough with you.
Absolutely.
I do have, so you said that about 250 folks net kind of waver into Inglemore, and so it's obvious that Inglemore is kind of the high school that's really in demand in the area. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand why people feel hurt. A lot of folks do choose where they're going to live based on that high school. I mean, I'm lucky. I happen to have bought on the correct side of the street. But my daughter, who's going to Kenmore Elementary, her and her friends are going to be split up when they make it to high school, and that's going to be hard to have to explain to her. So I just hope that you can look beyond the data a little bit and look at those personal relationships and look at the emotions that are involved too, because this is going to really affect Kenmore quite a bit. I understand this is a tough decision. I'm glad I'm not the one that has to make it. And I know you guys are doing a great job. I appreciate everything you guys do. But I hope there's some solution that can be found to keep the Kenmore Elementary cohort together, because I think it's really important. These friendships that folks make when they're 7 last a lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I come from it, I think, a little different perspective, in that when Mrs. Gillette was talking about her son, I remember I got split up from my elementary school. I never saw the kids from my elementary school again after I moved on to junior high school, and I never recovered. I mean, I never made it. I think a lot of you know that I'm a high school dropout. I mean, I just barely made it out of junior high school. So when I hear about friends, I grew up in South Central LA, and so it was like Mrs. Gillette was saying, friends and her classmates have her kids back. I mean, it was sort of, I lost that support system. Nobody had my back when I moved on. And so I hear about things like that, and it goes back to my childhood, and I start thinking about the things that I went through. And so I get a little bit protective about it. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said when you think of Kenmore. When I think about Kenmore, when I'm off lobbying for Kenmore and meeting different people in different parts of the country, I mean, it's Inglemore High School. Our kids go to Inglemore High. It's Kenmore High. I mean, one of the first things I did when I got elected back in 2004 was we got the reader board installed. We passed we needed to change our sign code to allow that reader board to go in, and it was for our high school. So I guess I just feel kind of strongly that anything you guys, I know the data is, you're working with the data, and I really appreciate the dilemma that you're in. I think of Kenmore and I think of Inglemore High School, and I'm really proud of that school. And and some of the other things that I've been hearing, and maybe you can dispel some of this and maybe you can't, is the boundary lines. Kenmore Elementary is such a diverse school, and it is the highest percentage of poverty in the entire North Shore school system. And to have that network broken up, I mean, there's potential there for a lot of damage to the kids. And I know none of it's intentional. But I mean, you sort of form friendships and reliances, and so I've never really seen where the boundaries are. I don't know that anybody has. My understanding is that like the trailer park right next door is where one of the boundaries is. So I'm a little concerned that that we take a look at that socioeconomic component of it and try to be as fair as I know you guys are.
Yeah.
So it's a tough job.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Bricker.
But those are my concerns.
Yeah. We did bring a set of more detailed maps that encompass every service area in the school district. They're a bit more readable as far as looking at major roads, and I left a copy with the city manager, and so I would certainly welcome you to take a look at those. And as far as the demographics, while the work that's been done to this point has really focused on more on geography and school capacity, we are doing the analysis of overlaying the demographics of this proposed draft boundary plan compared to the current demographics of our school communities. And what I can say is, at least on a preliminary basis, what we're seeing in Kenmore is that it would not become a more diverse or a more needy school. It would actually move slightly in the opposite direction. When you look at the populations that the plan would move to different school communities, as well as the new populations that would join Kenmore. So it's little solace, I understand, as far as your major concerns about Kenmore and a sense of community, but it is not taking our most challenged school and making it more challenged.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Herbig.
So I'm looking at the number of students who will be shifting high schools in 2017, and I see that 37 kids will be moving into Inglemore, but 460 will be moving out of Inglemore, leaving. I mean, that's 427 net loss to Inglemore. What's the thought process of that? Because it sounds. You talk a lot about waivers and making sure there's a lot of waivers for IB, but is the thought process to make Inglemore more of kind of a magnet school for IB and make that kind of the main draw to Inglemore and make it less of a community school and to draw more from all over the district, or is there something else going on there?
No, I think Inglemore already is a magnet school in the districts, and I would probably defer to Katrina on this one, but I would say that the current numbers at Inglemore don't reflect, these reflect resident area enrollment. Right. And so already Inglemore's population is much greater than its resident area enrollment. So I believe the plan is crafted to allow Inglemore to maintain the capacity that would allow it to continue to serve a large number of students from outside its service area.
Right, but it looks like you're taking out 427 residents. You're changing the boundary, so there's 427 less kids going there. Is the thought to make that up with IB waivers, or?
Not to make it entirely up, but to have capacity to continue to allow, as we do now, folks from across the district as well as from outside the district who might be attracted to the International Baccalaureate program to access that at Inglemore.
Okay. I also think what you're not seeing on here is there's going to be some growth happening in the Inglemore service area.
Oh, okay.
So as we shared with you on some of the permitting process that we're seeing, there's going to be a pipeline of kids coming through beyond 2021.
Okay, thanks.
And I would just add that North Shore in general has just long had a policy that allows waivers to all of our schools, and there are unique programs at each of our schools that students from across the district access. So there's students from within the Inglemore service area that access Bothell and Woodinville High School programs as well.
Correct.
One thing to note on that map, so instead of drawing 3 grade levels from each of those high school service areas, you will be drawing 4 grade levels. So that's why each of the high school service areas need to get smaller, because you're drawing more people from the same area. Because you're going from a 3-year to a 4-year high school.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity.
We appreciate your coming out here and talking with us.
And we appreciate your love of all things Kenmore and Inglemore High School. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Yeah, and I guess you'll be there Thursday, right? Thursday for the open house, or a team will be?
There will be Wednesday and Thursday.
Wednesday and Thursday, I believe.
Skyview.
Wednesday, we're at Skyview. Thursday, from 6 to 8 p.m., we'll be in Inglemore High School.
Okay. Thank you.
Spanish-speaking forum Monday at Woodmore Elementary from 6 to 8 p.m. as well.
Great. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is the King Conservation District presentation of the 2015 Program of Work Implementation Plan. And thank you for coming and talking to us tonight.
Am I on? There we go. Okay. So my name is Melissa Lang. I'm with King Conservation District, and I have spent the better part of the last year out talking to city councils, introducing and/or reacquainting you with King Conservation District. So, as by way of introduction, for those that don't know, King Conservation District is part of the Conservation District, which is national, and we came out of the Dust Bowl days, and our goal is to build better ground to help folks. And as our mission statement says up there, we assist private landowners in King County to protect and enhance land, water, and food in rural and urban areas through education programs, technical assistance, and cost share programs. And with this, we build better ground across the region. So as I said, we came out of the Dust Bowl era. We have just celebrated our 65th anniversary. But as the King County Council just voted to approve our program of work for 2015, they said we're in a new era of Conservation District. Typically, the Conservation District has worked with the rural communities, and while you will always be able to borrow a manure spreader from us, we realize, just as the previous presentation showed, our county is changing. We're becoming much more urban, and that's where we need to bring some of our services to the urban area. So about 20 months ago, at the request of King County, there were two complementary committees formed, and that was the Conservation Panel and a task force. And through these panels, there were 100 natural resource priorities identified. And of those 100, there were 6 that were prioritized and determined that KCD, King Conservation District, was uniquely qualified to address. We were also tasked with the job of creating an advisory committee that would help us to create a program of work that we submitted to the King County Council on August 1st. So this advisory committee is made up of King County reps, folks from the city of Seattle and Bellevue, Sound Cities Association folks, rural and urban landowners, and then also representatives who were talking to us about equity and social justice. So we worked with those folks with a very rigorous schedule. We met sometimes 2 and 3 times a month and came up with our program of work. And Sound Cities Association on July 9th, through their PIC committee, voted to approve that. It went to their council, and they approved it. And then also on November 17th, it went before the Metro King County Council, and they voted 8-0. We call that unanimous, to approve. So from that, we developed the implementation plan, and that you have a copy of in your packet. And it is a 5-year implementation plan, and it outlines an additional $3 million worth of new investments around regional natural resource management priorities. We're currently working with the same advisory committee to develop guidelines and criterias for how we'll be using that money. For the new programs, we will be continuing with our existing programs. So as I said, there were 6 major areas that were identified, and those can be further consolidated into 3 areas. We'll be expanding the region's green infrastructure, as the earlier public comment was made about city trees. We'll be working with cities to help enhance and maintain city trees on both public and private property. We'll be working with rural farmers to help build a sustainable and equitable and resilient food system. Also within the cities, helping city dwellers to be able to grow food whenever and wherever they can. And then also helping to restore our private shorelines, both fresh and marine. I'm sorry, I'm not moving my slides forward, am I? So here we go. So in the forestry area, in the rural part of that, we will be working with folks who have property of 5 acres or less. King County has programs that help landowners with more property than that, but we will be working particularly with that group because they don't have the support. And within the urban areas, as I said, working with individual private landowners to both maintain and enhance urban trees, and then also with cities. Around the regional food system, an interesting statistic is that of the $600 million of raw foods consumed in King County farmers only produce 120 million of that. So there is a large amount of food that we bring from outside, that there is the opportunity to have our King County farmers being able to provide. We'll also be working with small to medium-sized farmers to help overcome the obstacles that keep them from being able to bring food, improving storage facilities, production, distribution, and marketing opportunities, helping them to try and get into the institutional markets. As far as shorelines and riparian habitat, we know that over 2/3 of King County marine and fresh water shoreline is owned by private landowners. So if we want to make a significant difference, we have to engage private landowners in making those changes. And we do that through one-on-one technical assistance, project implementation, workshops, and classes. So our traditional services we will continue to offer. We offer free soil testing. Every King County resident within the district has up to 5 free soil samples available, and they can access that on our website, kingcd.org. We coordinate volunteer coordination, and I know there was a great project here in Kenmore last year along the Swamp Creek where we did work. We have cost share programs. We call it landowner incentive, where we work with landowners to help pay for habitat restoration in aquatic areas, and also some stormwater issues around livestock and water. We do workshops. We have jurisdictional grants for our member jurisdiction, and we offer technical assistance. So, I come here and ask how King Conservation District can help Kenmore meet the goals of providing your citizens access to local healthy food, vibrant and urban rural forest canopy, and improved water quality. So I wanted to call your attention to a couple things that I had in the packet. We on Saturday, and it looks like the weather is going to be great. We have a native bare root plant sale happening down in our Renton parking lot, so people can come down there. The pre-sale has closed, but there will be walk-up sales, and we'll also be having a community fair with a lot of great folks out there giving great information. Also in your packet are fact sheet and the intake sheet for the free soil testing. And this is something, if you wanted to make copies and make that available out for your community booth, that would be great. There's also a couple of sheets here talking about different workshops that we're offering We have a mud, manure, and pasture management series coming up in March. That is great. I've been to that myself. And then some group volunteer opportunities. We have an election coming up for one of our Board of Supervisors, so there's some information there. And then on the other side of your packet, I wanted to call attention to a funding sheet that we have. As I mentioned, one of the programs that we have is jurisdictional grant money. If you look on the back side, Kenmore has about $100,000 in jurisdictional grant money available. So we would love to work with you. I know some cities will save that up because they have the money earmarked for maybe a larger scale project.
And that's because in every question, if there was a response that either person did not answer the question or did not wish to answer the question, those were included in the 100% response. So maybe yes is 80%, no is 10%, and maybe 10% of people didn't respond to that question. So when you look at these results, be aware of that. So in terms of where in Kenmore people lived, about half of the respondents lived and or work south of SR 522. 31% live and or work on the north side of SR 522, and 14% live on one side and work on the other side. So that's where the folks who responded came from. Most have lived in Kenmore more than 10 years, and most were between 40 and 60. That's 49%. That's a little bit older than the census would state. The census, the mean age is 39 and a half years. Then again, a lot of those under 39 and a half are probably not going to be responding to the survey. Most respondents live in a single-family residence, 88%. In our census data, about 70% of the housing units in the city are single-family, so that population may be slightly overrepresented, and over 50% of the respondents are living with children. So one of the questions we asked was, how would you describe Kenmore? And we had several different options, but 3 rose to the top, and 1 really rose to the top. So the favorite community descriptor of those that were provided, 42% liked Kenmore as a vibrant waterfront community. The other 2, a quiet suburban community, or a thriving and sustainable community, as you can see, are sort of neck and neck. And then the other options that were provided had a lesser percentage. We also asked a question about small town feeling. That's currently a phrase that's currently contained in the existing vision statement. And the first question we asked was, what does small town feeling mean to you? And we gave people the option of 4 choices from a whole list of options. And again, as you look through the survey materials, you'll see what those were. The 2 that received the most votes were a place that feels safe and friendly, and a place where you know your neighbors and others in the community and have a sense of belonging. Then the next question said, based on what you think is a small town feeling, should Kenmore have a small town feeling? And yes, 81% of respondents said Kenmore should have a small town feeling. So I think that certainly answered that question. At this point, we started asking about different phrases that are in the vision statement. And so I'm going to run through all of these, and I'll try to keep this quick, but there were a lot of components to the vision statement. The first one, Kenmore is, in 2035, a community that is family-friendly, that recognizes its history and values diversity. 41% agreed with that statement. 24% strongly agreed, 23% were neutral, 9% disagreed, and 3% strongly disagreed. I ran through that with this particular one because I wanted to show you how I laid these out. So we had these 5 points that people could choose: strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. The way I've ranked these on the slides are by the largest percentage to the smallest percentage. And in every case, most people agreed with the statements. So there was not a single case where people disagreed with the statements. So I wanted to point that out as we go through here, and you'll see that some were strongly agree was at the top of the list versus agree. In one case, neutral and disagree changed places, but I'll just run through these quickly. So the next one is about health, safety, and welfare of all citizens. Here's one where 47% strongly agreed. You can see the numbers. A community with a safe, reliable, and effective system of streets, transit routes, sidewalks, bikeways, and trails. Another strongly agree, 54%. A community that fosters a sense of belonging and pride and makes use of the skills of its citizens through volunteerism and public involvement. 40% agree, 30% strongly agree. A community that supports the character of its single-family residential neighborhoods. 35% agree, 30% strongly agree. So this one didn't rate quite as many positive responses. A community that offers a range of housing types. 35% agree, 24% neutral. This is the one, as you can see, where strongly agree and neutral traded places on this one. A community that actively protects natural and environmentally sensitive areas, significant open space, trees, and air and water quality. 59% strongly agree, 29% agree. Community with its own sense of place and an identifiable, walkable downtown. This is an interesting question, and when we get to the end of this set of slides, I have two slides that talk about what were the most popular responses and what were the least popular responses, and this one reappears, so we'll talk about that in a minute. A community that is connected both visually and physically to its waterfront. 59% strongly agree, 25% agree. A community with clear design standards. 39% agree, 31% strongly agree. A community that supports the arts, 40% agree, and 28% strongly agree. Schools, a community that supports and encourages education and quality schools. Certainly hearing the earlier conversation today, 67% strongly agree and 23% agree. This was one of the highest and most supported phrases in the vision statement. A community that supports active, healthy lifestyles with well-maintained parks, trails, open spaces, and recreational facilities. 62% strongly agree, 29% agree. Prosperous and vibrant community with an economic base that provides for citizens, provides employment opportunities, and supports businesses. 39% strongly agree, 37% agree. You can see the trend here. All of them are supported. A community that is a good partner with citizens and governments throughout the region. 45% agree, 33% strongly agree. And the last one, a community with an informed citizenry working with an open, responsive government that seeks out and integrates public input. 43% strongly agree, 40% agree. So, looking at all of these, I went back through and looked at the most popular components of all of those phrases. And you can see that, actually I had them reversed. Schools was number 2. A community that supports active, healthy lifestyles beat it by 1%. This is 91%. And the way I looked at this was to total those that said strongly agree plus those that said agree. So community that supports and encourages education and quality schools at 90%. A community that actively protects natural and environmentally sensitive areas at 88%. A community with a safe and reliable and effective system of streets, etc., at 86%. And a community that is connected both visually and physically to its waterfront came in at 84%. Now, the least popular components, again, the way I looked at this was to total the highest percentage of strongly disagree plus disagree. And a reminder, these numbers were smaller, quite a bit smaller. In every case, people supported the phrases, if you were looking just at straight numbers. So the first one, a community with its own sense of place and an identifiable, walkable downtown. 23% either disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. And I will tell you that it was the last phrase that most commonly was of concern to folks, integrated with higher density housing. I actually went through all 272 surveys and looked at the responses, and they were pretty clearly either because people were not interested with more high density housing, or because they didn't think the community would get there before 2035, that particular vision, or they didn't respond with any comment at all. It's very hard to interpret from the set of comments what the reasoning is, but the one that did stand out was were the number of comments about higher density housing. The next one, a community that offers a range of housing types to provide a choice of attractive living accommodations for all residents. 19% disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. And the last one, a community that supports the character of its single-family residential neighborhoods. 14% disagreed with that statement. I think in all three of these statements, really the issue is that very difficult balance between single-family and multifamily housing. So with that, that's sort of my summary of what is in the survey. Again, it's really interesting reading, and I hope you may have many questions after you've gone through it, but that you'll spend some time with it.
Questions? Councilmember Herbig.
So when is our next I'm still going through all of this because this is some very interesting comments in here. When are we next going to be able to kind of chime in on this?
Right. So the Planning Commission will be taking this up again tomorrow night, and then we'll be going through a series of meetings along with the rest of the comprehensive plan elements over the next couple of months. I think if council has comments or questions, I can be a point of contact. Formally, it would come back before you in April, I think. May.
Councilmember Sperry.
Thank you for putting this together so quickly with it closing this morning, and thank you, commissioners, for waiting and waiting and waiting. And I hope this is good stuff for you. Everybody's trying to read it here. One of my questions is on the comments when they're numbered. Are they just numbered like this was the first comment on this question? Is there any way to tell? I guess what I'm looking for is, say there's number 30. Was that the number 30 survey gave these comments? No. Okay.
No.
Maybe you can help me out here.
The tool provides just how many comments were received for a question. So that's those are the numbers that are provided in order. If you want to look at the individual comments that were made, so I was trying to do the cross-reference between how did people respond to question 12 and what comments did they make, you have to actually go into the individual surveys. And you can do that, and there's probably some sort of a cross-tabulation tool. I have not used that. Okay. But you can go into individual surveys and see if this person answered, I am one of those who does not live or work in Kenmore, and what did that specific person say. You can get that information, but we did not put that out.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I thank you for doing this. We saw the redlined edition of this at our retreat, and a lot of it was wordsmithing changes and emphasis and so on. And I tend to agree with what's in it, and I tend to I'm encouraged by what the survey tells us. But I do want to point out that the vision statement is a policy statement. That's a policy statement that really should originate with the council, the way I see it. And I appreciate the Planning Commission weighing in on this and commenting on it and making some suggestions, and I appreciate the survey. It's really well done. But it all comes back to the council as a policy statement on which the rest of the comprehensive plan is based. So the vision statement doesn't result from the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan really should result from the vision statement. So, I think the council will look at it. I think it should have been wordsmithed by the council a little bit more in our retreat, so that we said, this is what we'd like to see. This is our initial thoughts. This is our rough draft. Planning Commission, can you refine it for us? Now, that would have made sense to me, but it's coming the other way. We haven't had a chance really to weigh in on it yet.
Well, if I may respond a little bit, I think, as I said, is any amendments to the comprehensive plan usually a recommendation comes from the Planning Commission to the Council, the Planning Commission are reflecting the community input. When the draft was developed, we took a look at the budget process that Council went through, looking at the results maps. We took a look at policy changes that have come through the state, or we looked at any other changes. So the vision statement, the draft that was presented to you, took a look at the work that the Council had done on the results map through the budget, which again reflected what the community thought was important. And we looked at things that were not already in the vision statement, whether it was healthy active living, for example, was one that we included in the vision statement. So we've tried to reflect, again, previous work that the Council has done to obtain community input, as well as now kind of, I guess, ground truthing that, again, with the community. Council will have the opportunity to look at the Planning Commission recommendation and is the body responsible for adopting the amendments in May and in June. So again, that's how the process works. And again, if there is any specific changes or direction or questions that you would like to give the Planning Commission this evening, now's the opportunity as they begin work on reviewing the vision statement at the next few meetings.
My only comment is the vision statement is a council statement. There are 7 members of the council that are elected by the citizens. It appears in all our documents, a vision statement, goals, and so on. The vision statement doesn't originate with the comprehensive plan. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I think the comprehensive plan evolves from the vision statement. Am I reading things wrong? Do I have the wrong opinion on this?
It's a component of the comprehensive plan.
Well, it's added to it, but it doesn't originate there.
It's kind of like the summary of the comprehensive plan, kind of like the council goals that you set each year, summarize what's important to the council. The vision statement is a component of the comprehensive plan. It's not a standalone document.
Then why is it standalone in other documents?
Because, again, it's a summary of the whole comprehensive plan. It's summarizing what the long-term vision is and the goals in the comprehensive plan are to help you get to that vision.
No, and I see where the deputy mayor is going. I mean, to me, the vision statement is the big overall statement, and the comprehensive plan is what flows from it. So, but I understand what he's saying. Some of these responses are interesting, to say the least. Do you have any thoughts on, I mean, some of them are very, very negative.
It's split. I mean, I think if you ask people, you never get complete agreement, and there's usually a spectrum from agreement to disagree, and that's why we ask the question. Some people strongly disagree, but again, trying to pick out individual comments as reflective of what everybody feels. It's hard to kind of focus on one comment rather than another, which is why we didn't include the comments in the presentation this evening.
No, and I appreciate that fact. I'm just looking through these comments. Some of them very interesting. Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Curtis.
Well, it is interesting, and I think, like any survey, when anybody can go on and do a survey, you're going to get a cross-section, and that means you get people that love what you're doing and people that hate what you're doing. And I think anybody that sits up here or sits over there, you know that we have, for as many people that like what we're doing, there's always people that feel like we could do much better, and this is a great opportunity for them to voice a lot of that frustration. So I wouldn't take it personally, Mr. Mayor.
I can't help it. I do.
But it is a learning tool, and I am very comfortable with the results of this. And as the Planning Commission works through the vision statement and everything, I mean, it comes to us, and we still get to have the final vote on it. So it's I'm not uncomfortable in the least with the process, and I look at it as it's more input for us to make an educated decision. So I'm fine with that, and I actually am happy with that process.
Councilmember Curtis and Councilmember Sperry.
So I guess, I see it as the vision statement we inherited from the previous vision statement. So it isn't that the Planning Commission is coming up with a new vision statement. So we started with that one, and the question is, should it be amended? Right. And as I look at these answers to the question, I said, hey, we did a pretty good job last time around because there's no major changes. Mostly people are supportive of the things we've been listing every single year and every single retreat. For all the years I've been on council. So that makes me think, there's no major place where we're off, that big major changes needed. So I was encouraged by the results.
Councilmember Sperry.
Thank you. Well, I was going to ask the commissioners. I know we just have all kind of taken our look at it within the last hour or so, but do you have any questions for us? Do you have any thoughts as you're looking at this? Is there anything? I mean, you've waited a long time, so now's your time to ask some questions here.
Yeah. Angela.
Thank you. I have a question on some of the terms that were used that seem to be very struck a note for many people. In particular, I picked up on history. Our history seemed to be debated quite a bit. Some people saying we have no history. What history? What are you talking about? Others saying, yes, we should emphasize that. The other one that I noticed seemed to have a lot of debate also is the term diversity. And I'd be curious to know how we define diversity, because I noticed some comments here that also related to family-friendly seem to imply that maybe we're emphasizing families and not single people, right? So I would welcome your perspectives specifically on those three things, including, our history, a focus on our history. Do we want to mention specifically family-friendly? And if we do use diversity, if you feel like that's a valuable term, how do you describe diversity?
Well, let's just go down the line. Councilmember Smith.
Well, I would, let me touch on the history one. I look at the Kenmore Heritage Society and everything they do, and they're all volunteers, and I think they add a valuable component to what Kenmore is, and so I would encourage the inclusion of the word history somewhere in there, just because I think it would be somewhat of a slap at them for all that they've contributed to our city, and they're great volunteers. On the diversity side, I didn't think of it as having to be defined, and so I guess I'll just leave it at that. I actually like the fact in some ways that it's not defined, because then it's maybe less offensive to some people too. Once you start to wordsmith a word like diversity, I think you probably end up getting stronger opinions one way or another, and that's maybe a bad thing.
Councilmember Sperry?
Yes. Well, actually, the survey said vibrant waterfront by a long shot. I think the history might have troubled people or been a confusion because, we're not Bothell. We don't have 100-year-old buildings. And so if a person thinking, well, what's the history? Almost everything's new here. But really where that did come from was that Kenmore Heritage Society started just about the time that the city did. That was where it came. And so I know our first mayor was quite involved in that. And so I'm sure that that's part of why history is in it. So depending on what the person was thinking, new buildings, old buildings, I could see where they were confused by that. I don't really have much to add as far as the diversity. I mean, to me, diversity means that you're welcome, whether you're single or married or have kids or don't, or how you think. It includes ideas, too. It's not just how you look. So, I've always loved our motto about courtesy is contagious, so I just feel like that's part of it. But anyway, great questions.
Councilmember Curtis.
So on the history question, it makes me think that maybe we haven't advertised our history to the new folks in town. So some educational opportunities. Family friendly, I think a lot of us, not that we discriminate against people that are single, but I think the school district is strong. Some of the decisions that have made in terms of gambling and other things have been kind of family centric. So I think that's an important concept the city has stood for. And diversity, again, my mind is it's all diversity. So age, young and old, males, females, all religions, all cultures are welcome in Kenmore. And I like the idea of don't define it too much because you just get in trouble.
Councilmember Herbig.
Well, I'm actually going to crib from a comment on page 7, comment number 7 there. It says, values diversity will be dated soon. Diversity suggests, quote, you are different. A better phrase is inclusive. And that one really struck home because I actually think that's probably a better phrase than diversity because diversity really is pointing out people's differences. Inclusive is much more welcoming. And I think that's kind of the feeling we're going for rather than...
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
So, and that's part of why I need more time reading this because there's some good stuff in here, but
really
it's a lot
stuff.
of it. So.
Yep. Really good stuff.
Deputy Mayor.
My only comment is I have Kakeyama's, is that how you pronounce it? His book, and I'm about a third of the way through it. And he talks about studies of engagement of the citizens. And some are strongly engaged and moderately, but there's a block of people that are not engaged in what's going on in the city. I was one of them for many years before I got involved in things about a dozen years ago. I wasn't aware of the history of the city. I was too busy with other things, and I think there are a lot of people like that. Now, what this tells me, history, is that we need to do a better job cherishing and publicizing our history and being proud of our history and the things that have gone on, and to involve more and more of the citizens in the activities of the city, the history, the current events, the fun things that we do, and all that sort of thing. So I think it's telling me that. Not that we have no history. It's just they're disengaged and aren't aware of it.
Councilmember Danuski?
I agree with the other council members on the diversity part, on the history part, and I like Councilmember Herbig's inclusive rather than diversity. I think that's a really good idea. I haven't read the comments on the family friendly, so I do like the idea of family friendly, but maybe we can open up the statement to, include some more, but I'd really have to read it before I could speak intelligently. Also, just, I guess, noting in my mind that, this is information from 270 people out of 21,000 people. So in a way, I'm trying to just kind of figure out if this is really what everybody in Kenmore thinks, or if everybody who, likes Kenmore and everything were the ones that, responded to the survey. So I'm just kind of thinking about that too.
Yeah, I think the inclusion of history is important. I think the work that the Historical Society had done needs to be out there more. I think we need to do more with it. It's a valuable body of work. I certainly agree with Councilmember Herbig on the inclusive rather than diverse. I've seen it in the National League of Cities. I mean, that's the term that people are now using. It means so much more. You know, inclusive, we've got waterfront, we've got economically disadvantaged residents, we've got everything in between. We've got the young, we've got the old, we've got families, we've got singles. With some of the development that's happening here, we're going to find more singles, but that's okay. They're all part of the community that's in, and we're inclusive. So if you want to think of the city as one big family, then it's family oriented.
Baker?
Yes.
Yeah. If I can have a question as well, or maybe a comment. I'm Mike Mulcair. I'm one of the new planning commissioners. Lori, if you wouldn't mind just going back one slide, one of the things that stuck with me, and I've just had access to this data the same amount of time that you folks have, but I think the continuity that we saw with the least popular comments around, you know, identification of housing is matched by the continuity of the most popular comments around what our community is looking for. I think they speak with a very loud voice about what is important to them, and that should be reflected in the vision statement as well as in everything we do for the next 20 years. It seems that they're looking for opportunities to connect with one another outdoors in an active way. And I think that we as planning commissioners and as city council members have a great many opportunities and tools to do that. I was looking through the agenda for tonight's meeting, looking at just some of the financial data about budget allocations, and I saw $350,000 allocated towards the skate park, which is a great start for 2015, but then a deferment of funds for Morelands Park renovation, which is to 2018. And so I see that there will be quite a bigger investment over the years, an aggregate $1 million plus investment, but it sounds like the community, if we can look at 272 responses, that 1-point-something% response rate, as a significant voice. But I think if we look at this slide as well as the least popular slide, a pretty consistent voice that people are looking to be outdoors in our community and being active. And I think we should honor that both through the vision statement and in our actions.
Anything else?
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, Deborah Shrevny.
Oh, thanks, Mayor Baker. Yeah, I would agree with that completely, and I, you know, this is very exciting to me to see that, you know, after all these years, that this theme is still very, very prominent. And, you know, if we are to consider something like a bond measure, there, you know, there could be significant support for something like that if it's played right to these interests. So it's hopeful. And it also supports some of the investments that we've made recently along the waterfront as well.
Right. I was looking at it, this whole past year has pretty much been waterfront oriented, and I think it's met with some great successes. And so, and I'm not surprised by this. What you saw when you did the first survey, well, want waterfront, and they still want it. So nothing much has changed. Anybody else? Angela.
Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so. Actually, Councilmember Sperry mentioned something to me recently where she said, you know, Kenmore considers itself a city of choice. And I had never heard that term as it refers to Kenmore, but I really liked it and would like to get your opinions on that. The reason why I like it is at a high level when we're talking about vision statement, the idea of choice is so appealing to me, right? Because it says that we have a lot of options, we have variety, people like choice, right? And depending on where you live, you don't always have a lot of options available to you. So I like the fact that it can kind of set us apart, it's unique. And I'm wondering if that's a term that you guys use frequently, and if so, if that might be applied broader in like a vision statement or at least as a value in planning the comprehensive plan.
Go ahead.
I like the word a lot. I don't, this is exactly why I like having input from the Planning Commission on this and not just our body trying to figure it out, because that's, honestly, I've sit next to Lori for 3.5 years. I've never heard her refer to the city as that, so I like that. But that's something I'm absolutely, I think that's a neat word, and it's options, it's choice, and that's kind of neat.
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention in the context that we were talking about it, we were actually talking about the different levels of housing, because we were talking about affordable housing, how expensive housing is getting on the east side, right? And so when she said that, she was saying how in Kenmore there is a lot of choice. You can find housing at all, economic levels, and I thought that's great. That's a great way of describing it, I think.
Councilmember Curtis?
So to me, the word choice feels a little too vague. So the questions we've asked were more specific. So you can have choice over, how you get to work, and choice over where you live, and choice over so many things that it almost seems like it's too broad of a concept to pin down and use as a vision kind of statement. But that's just, I could see it go either way.
Councilmember Danuski.
So I was going to say exactly what he said over there. Choice, if it was just a general statement, seems to be too much for me to think choice of what, in what context. But I do like the idea of maybe getting the word choice somewhere in the housing part. That could work.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, there's a range of housing for different demographic groups. And if we're diverse or inclusive, there has to be services for a diverse or variety of different demographics and ages and so on. So there has to be that choice, or that diversity of activities and facilities and things to facilitate, to provide for the services for all the different groups that we have in this city, the inclusive nature of the city. So I think it's implied by everything else. And as I say, as Milton commented there, I'm not so sure that the word choice needs to be there. It's implied by the variety of everything we do have. Parks, water, nature, swamps, forests, we've got it all. And you can choose what playground you want to go to.
And have fun.
Councilmember Sperry, do you want to weigh in on this one?
Not really. I mean, I think it's a good discussion. I actually don't really remember what I said, so I'll be honest with you. But, I do think that there is an aspect, though, of we do want to be the community that people who have a choice want to come to. And, we just got another thing as a Seattle neighborhood. I can't remember, was it Seattle Magazine or something, as a top 10 neighborhood for Seattle. And if you look at what people want, it's very consistent. Most people move because it's affordable. There's a housing option for them. They want to be close to where they work, so it's a reasonable commute. They want good schools, and they want recreation. And obviously, we always forget it, but it's the safe community, and that kind of thing, because we're so blessed and fortunate that we do have a safe community. And so those are pretty consistent. And, we've got some unique assets, obviously, with the waterfront. You saw how that just leapt off the page. People really wanted that in there,
So were you referring to the Seattle Magazine article that picked Kenmore as one of the up-and-coming places to be because of the ease of getting to Seattle and Bellevue and the affordable housing prices? And
Well, this is about the fourth time. I mean, I remember Better Homes and Garden, we were a top 10 town for families, and I had to stop wanting to cut the concerts at St. Ed because they wrote those up. They said they were good, so, okay. But
Business Journal, it said
yeah,
we were
Puget Sound Business
one of the
Journal.
top cities to locate in the three-county region.
Seattle Met. And it's again, the things are consistent, so.
Anybody else? Angela?
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Just another perspective related to that. I think it's easy for the city to maybe to want to offer a ton of different services and to offer their residents a little of everything and to think that that is giving people a choice. But I do think it's possible, actually, if not conscientious about it, to end up in a position where you don't have a lot of choice. So when North Shore School District was talking, I was thinking, my kids actually go to private school, and I love that there's a variety of options here. I love that there's a great public school here where a lot of families go to and they choose to send their kids to, and then I have, options for Montessori school or religious schools or all different types of choices. So I think it's slightly different. We were trying to finesse the wording when it came to housing, and on the Planning Commission, we were debating the use of affordable for very needy. And I thought it was really significant to leave that in there. I think that group, very needy group who cannot afford the majority of housing, I thought needed to be called out specifically. As a group, we decided that housing for all people was what we ended on as wording, but I thought that was very different. So for me, choice does seem different to me than ending up with what we have or being intentional about bringing into the city what we want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think on the housing thing, for me, and the different committees I've been involved in, I believe that people that are making $12, $15 an hour should be able to live in the communities they work in. And if that's affordable housing, then that's what it is. I think the term that's being used nowadays is workforce housing, that the average workers in the community are able to live in the community. So, I mean, I understand what you went through there. That's a tough one. So, anybody else?
So, Mayor,
thank you guys for thinking of all these different things. I mean,
I understand that as council has the opportunity to read through the document, it may generate some questions or comments, and I would certainly encourage council to provide those comments to staff so that we can forward those to the Planning Commission. In the effort of efficiency, it would be most appreciated if you could provide those comments or questions within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other question? Councilmember Smith.
I do have, so the items that had the strongest response, I can't remember, a couple of the slides back earlier, I think it had, they were in the low 90% was either, there we go. So I'm curious, is in this vision statement, do you envision you going through this and giving is this higher up on the list, or how would you address comments like this? I'm just curious how you differentiate a comment that has 91% versus of strong or agreeable support versus a comment of 75%. Is it just lower down the page?
I don't think we've reached the Planning Commission hasn't really discussed what to do with that, whether there should be some ranking based on percentage or whether they're just kind of statements in no particular order.
Okay.
So if there is, I guess, a preference from the council to give to the Planning Commission, would be one thing you could do.
I haven't thought about it in enough detail yet just because I've seen it tonight, but it does seem appropriate somehow to give more emphasis to there's clearly some things that people feel very strongly about. I just don't know the best way to do that. So that's, I guess, not much guidance, but that's my thought on it.
We could put them in a bigger font.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes.
I was just going to make one comment. When the Planning Commission was originally looking at the vision statement, they did move some phrases around with the thought that perhaps more significant ones would move, that all were important, but the more significant ones were closer to the top. So I don't know how we'll follow through with this new information, but...
Can I ask you one other question on that then? Was there any thought in trying to pare down the document? It's a lot of things, and when I look at that, I just look at a document that this could fly in any city I've ever been to, that it's everything I would want in my city, and I think probably most people would say that. And is there any way to make it more Kenmore?
I don't know the answer to that. It is quite long, but I will say that when the Planning Commission initially looked at the draft, they took one or maybe two things out, but then they added one back in. I think it's really an effort to encompass all the different aspects of the community.
Diversity.
Yeah, right.
Inclusiveness.
Inclusiveness. I don't know if the council has a perspective on that, if you'd rather it were shorter or not.
I wouldn't be insulted if it was shorter.
Councilmember Curtis, then the Deputy Mayor, and then Councilmember Danuski.
I'm happy to leave it any length as long as each sentence says something significant. As far as the order, sometimes things logically kind of group together, and I think the logical grouping is better than saying it has to be ranked from 1 to 15 or whatever. So some just sort of have a flow where they're fitting together, and I wouldn't probably cut those apart.
Deputy Mayor.
I agree with that it isn't necessarily a list of priorities in order. They're all important, or they wouldn't be there in the first place. But what basic question I have is, we have this doesn't have the vision statement in it, and it isn't on the iPad here. Are we talking about the vision statement that we received at the retreat? Is that the edition of it that we're reviewing, or is there something later than that?
No, that's the one that you're reviewing. That was the one that went to the public that this survey was asking for feedback on.
Thank you.
So what happened to the original vision statement? That the Planning Commission changed it to what went to the public? Is that what happened?
The Planning Commission gave some recommendations, and that was presented to Council in December and again at the retreat. So we were looking for, does this look about right, before we took it out to the public?
Where the changes came from the original to the one that went out. Where did those changes, did the Planning Commission make those changes?
The changes came from the Planning Commission after the staff had looked at the other documents to sort of let the Planning Commission know things that may have changed in the community, or looking at the results maps that the council had done. So again, the Planning Commission took all that into consideration before they made those edits to the original vision statement.
Great. Councilmember Danuski.
As far as ranking them, I don't think the document needs to be ranked, but I do think that people, when they read lists of statements, their mind does rank top to bottom. So just something to think about. We don't necessarily have to, but I think a lot of people who read it are going to assume that's what we're thinking.
Councilmember Berg, do you have something? Councilmember Sperry, do you have something?
No, not at this time. No, I think it's, look forward to seeing what the commission brings back. Looks like they've got a lot to work with.
Councilmember Curtis.
I think the idea of bolding that somebody had is not a bad one, so you could organize them in any way that made sense, but the few that are at the top, bold those, and then that would tell people, aha, there's a list here, and there are a few that are more important. So.
And I guess my only concern is that it's a vision statement and not a mission statement. Vision statements tend to be a little bit more concise and to the point, where mission statements tend to encompass a lot more. So if it's a vision statement, it's a vision statement. Anything else? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to the next meeting. So next item is staff report and status update on Parks Capital Projects. Mrs. Bent.
It looks like Mr. Cullenzy is waiting to say something, so I'll let him start.
Well, just so I don't forget the rest of the staff report, I'll just give it now.
Okay. I was just going by A. Go ahead.
I just want to remind everybody about the volunteer appreciation event tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the 192 Lake Trail Tap Room. And don't let the word tap room make you think it's not for everybody. It is for everybody. Little kids, everybody. So we hope those who have volunteered over the past year can join us. And then a little later on in the program, folks will be able to go and bowl across the street. So it's the city's little way of saying thank you for your volunteer service. And so I hope the planning commissioners come as well because they are volunteers. They have a meeting tomorrow night that starts at 7:30. So we purposely pushed their start time out a little bit so that they could come and enjoy the volunteer appreciation.
So it starts at 6?
6, yes.
Because I got on my calendar is at 7, so it's 6.
6 o'clock.
Okay.
How late is it going? Try to figure if I can stop by after driving up from Olympia. So.
Yeah, so I think people can start going over to bowl starting after 6:30. So I think be there between 6 and 6:45. Yeah, I think you should catch most people.
I had it till 8, so if I was wrong on the start time,
Yeah.
I'm probably wrong on the end.
It'll go later. It will go probably until 7:30 or so, but people might start wandering off around even as soon as 6:30. So, and then also Deputy Mayor Van Ness mentioned Peter Kagayama, and we're going to have him come and work with our community in the beginning of April 6th and 7th. And he's the author of For the Love of Cities, and you may recall at a recent city council meeting I showed you his presentation that he gave to the ICMA conference in September. And I was really affected by what he had to say, and his points really resonated with me, and I think they resonated with most, if not all of you. And so he's going to come, and hopefully he'll help even contribute to this comprehensive plan update and vision statement update that we're doing, and he'll come and work with the community on making our town, or taking our town to that next more interesting, fun, walkable, vibrant level. So he'll meet with City Council on Monday the 6th, and then he'll work with the community the following day. We'll give him a little tour prior to the council meeting, so he'll know what our community's like and what we're dealing with. So, and we'll get the word out as we usually do through our normal channels. But that's all I have.
No.
Oh, you're right. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. So I am recommending that we do not have a city council meeting on March 9th. Given that 3 of you will not be here that night, and also given the fact that we're having a meeting on March 2nd. We need to have a meeting on March 2nd to award the bid for the West A project. So we took a look at the agenda, and we figured that we could postpone pretty much everything on that agenda. Although there is a plat approval that we probably need to squeeze on the March 2nd agenda to keep that particular customer on schedule. So thank you, Mayor, for that reminder. March 9th, no council meeting. Any objections to that? All right.
Is it just me, or I mean, I've noticed some of it, but it's chilly in here.
It was last week, too.
Can we do something? And is there something that can be done? It's just chilly. It's just
You push
chilly.
that little button that has the up arrow.
Well, yeah, I'm going to have to wear a heavier jacket.
It's cold. I'm the coldest person. Cold.
Are there 4 votes to turn up the heat?
Now we're almost done.
Well, I can certainly take a vote if necessary. But I'm looking at people out there shivering and whatever, and so. All right. Next item on the agenda then, Mrs. Bent.
Thank you. So you have a memo in your packet giving a status update on parks capital projects. I hope it's pretty self-explanatory. One of the things that Rob wanted me to point out is included in your packet was an alignment shown for the Tolt Pipeline Trail. And we're working really hard with the dollars assigned to this project to get a paved trail so it actually looks like trail improvements. It's on the screen. I'm not sure what else to do on that, but it's in your packet, so you can see it, and we can try and bring it up on the screen. There we go. Look at that. Ambidextrous here. So the intent is to improve the trail. Here's 68th and right by Nudd here. So to do some additional paving, to remove the metal gate that's there right now at the entrance to the trail, and replace that with some removable bollards. There'll be a 10-foot wide paved trail with 2-foot gravel shoulders, and that will take you all the way from 68th, and if I can scroll down here a bit, it will keep going. Unfortunately, it's on 2 sheets, so the paved trail will continue right to the point where it will connect with the trail in front of the townhouse buildings. So again, we'll have a nice paved trail. It will connect in there to the existing paved trail. We didn't have quite enough money to get us all the way to 73rd. So again, this is, I guess, the phase A of the first phase. But we really wanted to make sure that if we were going to do a project, that it would look like an improved trail. So this is what we came up with. And right now we're working through some issues with the City of Seattle, who own the right-of-way, so we need their permission to make any improvements. So once we've worked through those issues, we'll then move forward with permitting, and depending on the timing of the permitting will depend on whether we're able to actually get to construction this year, but we'll see what we can do.
So this is better news than I think what you had been previously been given. So we're getting, like Debbie said, a 10-foot wide trail with 2-foot wide shoulders on either side, and it's going to be a raised trail. It'll also have a couple of pipes under it to help the water flow back and forth. Also, I think at least one of you or more asked that the gates, the unfriendly, unwelcoming gates, be removed and have the bollards in their place, so we're doing that as well. But as Debbie just said, City of Seattle wants us to do some additional studies that are going to cost about $35,000. That's not in our budget, and so that's the hang-up right now. We're trying to talk them down from that and help them understand that the studies and the site investigation and everything that we've already done is enough. So, but until we can convince the City of Seattle otherwise, the project is halted. So the good news is we can get more done than we thought. Bad news is we don't want to pay for $35,000 worth of studies unless we have to.
Councilmember Herwig?
Which department are you dealing with?
Seattle Public Utilities.
Okay. First, what I want to say, though, is I really am very excited to actually see this paved. I was not excited about this originally when you brought it up as a gravel trail, and this is a huge improvement. I really appreciate the work you guys put in this. This is going to be great. Yep.
Deputy Mayor?
The trail connects to the trail or sidewalk south of the condos there. Then when that reaches, 71st? The street that goes in front of the condos. Mm-hmm. Then is there a sidewalk on the south side of the street that goes out to 73rd? Do they have to cross the street to get to another sidewalk?
There is not a sidewalk right now on the south side. There is on the north side.
Okay, so in order to connect here, you cross the street to go to the sidewalk. Is there a sidewalk on the north side,
Yes.
east of 71st?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not perfect, but I think it's the start of a really nice trail connection. And
Yeah,
again,
I like this much better because I drive down 185th, and if it's been raining, there are two big sections of that trail that are underwater. So that we're raising it up and paving it makes it useful and not muddy the rest of the time.
Councilmember Danuski?
Are the bollards going to be fun?
I guess we should make them fun. What do you mean by fun?
Not gray. If you're taking maybe just
herons.
who knows? But if we're taking out a gray metal gate and putting in gray bollards, I don't think we've really accomplished that, making it look friendly part.
You're right.
But I don't know how much money we've got to play with that.
That's a good point. Good point. Needs to be fun. Good.
Be fun.
Like school colors.
Yeah.
Could be.
Anything else?
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it?
That's it, unless you've got questions on any other projects.
No, thank you.
Okay.
At least we're not getting a little simple wooden bridge for all that money at Squires Landing, at Logboom, so.
It'll be a very nice bridge.
It's going to be a very nice bridge indeed.
Fun even.
Yes, as long as it's fun.
Will it be gray?
All right.
Okay. No.
Next item. Reports and comments. Councilmember Smith.
Yes, I have one item. As you will remember, a couple of months ago, we talked a lot about what could be done with the Veterans Tribute or something at the City Hall Plaza or across the street at the new plaza, and a lot of the comments referenced it would be better over here. I can tell you the group that was working on that is terminated, so there is nothing going on with that. But what I would like to do, if I can get the approval of the rest of you up here, to at least work with the mayor and with the city manager to find out if there's just some kind of little document that we can make it known when we do redo the front plaza here, if we can have some kind of a veterans emphasis or tribute or something as part of that. I know this isn't something that I will probably be involved in at all, but I think it's a great spot, and I would hate to lose the momentum that has been gained to try to do something to recognize our veterans. And so if we could at least kind of slip it into the memory bank of the city files as far as when the funding is available for that plaza, if that can be a component, and it could be as simple as, gardens or who knows what, but just there will always be somebody in the community, I'm sure, that would be willing to step forward and be a part of leading something to work with the city on that. And so with your approval, I'd like to work with Rob and the mayor to see what we can come up with to at least know this gets addressed in the future.
I'm seeing a lot of nods and thumbs up, so
okay,
we'll
awesome.
proceed
Thank
that
you.
way.
Good.
Councilmember Sperry.
Well, I don't know if it's in the plan to send a thank you to the North Shore School District representatives who came here today, but if we do, I think we need to include the 90% of the survey results saying that they strongly or agree with supporting high-quality schools. I thought that was pretty powerful in light of the presentation tonight.
No, and thank you, Councilmember Sperry. I think it's important. They did come here. We brought them here for a purpose, and they did explain it to us, but I still think it's within our purview, our jurisdiction, or whatever you want to call it, that we certainly can can write a letter or comment, that we strongly support maintaining the unity of the schools in Kenmore, because that's what brought a lot of people here. And, there was not really much discussed as to where the lines were drawn, but I would certainly hate to see Kenmore Elementary with the problems and the demographic makeup of that school be split apart that way. So I certainly would be in favor of having the city manager or somebody who likes to write a lot more than I do draft that letter. So I don't know, where's the rest of the council on? Because Councilmember Sperry, you brought up a very good point there that they were kind enough to come out, and I think that we ought to do the other half of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we certainly heard, resoundingly from the community that the importance of, that clear path and not dividing the school. And we also heard, the challenges that they're facing, but it's never going to it never hurts to reinforce, the desire that we've heard here expressed tonight to them and add it as part of their input.
So we're all in agreement?
Ms. Danuski had some.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yeah, I would like to see us do a letter thanking them for coming and then just, reiterating that we'd like to keep Kenmore Elementary's cohort together and up through high school. But we should probably be a little bit careful on the part about the survey, because then you're telling the North Shore School District that their other school isn't any good and doesn't really send a good message. So, just keep it more. We'd like to see Kenmore Elementary's cohort stay together. We don't want to say Bothell High School is bad either.
But also, we need to keep in mind, and I'm sure the city manager will word this appropriately, because they're a separate taxing jurisdiction, and we wouldn't want the school board telling the city of Kenmore how to run the city. But we could express our personal feelings as a group. Maybe it'd be a resolution, but maybe just a letter would be fine. But it's obvious that we've heard from a lot of citizens that this is pretty important to the citizens of Kenmore.
Right. And they certainly have come to us with things when they wanted our backing on things, so it's not unheard of that we go to them.
Mm-hmm. We have supported their levies and all
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Councilmember Herbig.
I support sending a thank you note. I actually think going the route of a resolution might be a little bit more formal and might actually carry a little bit more weight.
I'm certainly not taking that off the table. I certainly think that's possible. It's just, I don't know what weight a resolution would have with them, with that correspondence.
It just seems a little bit more official than sending a letter. But.
Didn't you just have a whole bunch of whereases and I don't know, I can get my thoughts through on a whereas. I mean, I'm sorry, the lady who talked about her kid and losing, his friends that had his back really struck home with me. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the kind of things I think we want. We want to keep those kids together for a whole bunch of reasons. If you think a resolution is better, I'm certainly open to resolution. I mean,
I would say there's no minimum requirement of whereases that need to be in one. I think
absolutely not.
Right. I mean,
we'd have 50.
I
50
think
whereases.
we could cut down the whereases, and I do think it would make sense. I would only ask everything, whether it's letter or a resolution, that it's a really high respect. I know we would, or we wouldn't do it anyway. But sure. To Alan's point about them being a separate jurisdiction, I just. That's really an important point, and so I think we can ask for whatever we want as far as letting them know our feelings, but well, that's it.
I had some concern tonight that some of the citizens speaking thought that we could make the decision and change their mind, and that's not our role.
No, they were aware of that.
Okay.
They had a few bullet points.
They knew full well that they're their own people, but they wanted our help too. So, okay, so
we'll do it.
Yes.
I was just going to say, I think a letter, I mean, not just because I started with a letter, but I think it's to the point of reiterating our concerns. And again, giving them that opportunity to thank them, because they didn't have to come. I mean, they really didn't have to do that, and they spent a lot of time explaining it. And I think I understand the bigger picture now more, and I think it was good for all of us to hear it. And again, the citizens got a chance to express their concerns, which, I hadn't heard directly, and I think all of us were moved, by the different stories and how the kids are impacted.
No, I mean, I certainly learned a lot from this, and I was very grateful they were here.
And I think everybody...
Councilmember Curtis.
I would prefer a letter. I think it feels a little more friendly and less formal. The resolution, and I'd feel comfortable somebody just kind of writing a letter and signing my name to it. But once it's a resolution and it's all the whereases and it's all got to be official, and I wouldn't feel comfortable that being sent without it coming back to the council and us discussing it and approving it. And so I'd rather...
I envision that letter coming back, but in any event.
But the last comment that I'd have is that the council, I think, was a little gun-shy about coming to talk to us because they ran into a situation in Woodinville a few years ago that was a real buzzsaw for them. And I think they were well received here, and if we follow it up with a similar attitude in the letter, I think it'd be worthwhile.
They watched the video from the last meeting. They understood where we were coming from, and they felt comfortable.
Okay.
So, all right, we got that done. Okay.
So would you like me to bring it back to you on March 2nd, a week from tonight?
We do have that time that we can. You can bring it back, yes, or at least run it by us.
Okay. And I'm hearing resolution or letter?
Letter.
Okay.
To start with, Councilmember Curtis.
You can throw whereas in even in a letter. We had our coffee with the council on Saturday, and there was one safety issue brought up. The chain link fence along 68th has the top really hard iron rail. And if 61st? 61st on the east side of the street. So the comment was if that were taken out and a cable was put in, it would be a safer fence.
Yeah, that cable, there is a few of the posts where that top rail was removed and a cable was put in, and they would like to see that top rail removed all the way down for safety. Because when a car hits it in the height that it's at, it becomes something that impales somebody, and has a couple of times. And by replacing that top with a cable, it was said to us it was
apparently
safer.
It's a known problem with that particular style of fence. Right. And it was a design issue that's since been changed, but we still have one of those fences.
City Manager, could you?
Yeah, we'll follow up with it.
Great, perfect. Councilmember Herbig?
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Danuski?
Volunteering at the volunteer event tomorrow, so I'll see you there.
There you go. Deputy Mayor?
I have nothing.
So I passed out something here that on homeless. And there's a number of issues here where they're asking Sound Cities to take a position. They want to take a vote on the middle of April about this and to support this 10-year plan. And there's going to be some changes in the strategic plan, and they're looking for feedback on some definite areas here. So they want cities to repeal or mitigate local ordinances that criminalize people for being homeless. In other words, sleeping in parks and other things, making that, not having that be a criminal activity. They want to close the gap in the number of housing units in King County available to households below 30% of area and medium income. There's something in the King County code that says all cities in King County have a deficit in affordable housing, and cities are required to have housing for 12% of their population and 30% below the AMI. So there's three others, and I won't go through them. I've given you this. They're looking for councils to weigh in on this, so I have a choice of either voting yes, no, or abstaining from it. And Mrs. Benton also received one of these letters, And you're going to be bringing this to us here sometime in March, you said? I know I sort of hit you with this, sorry.
I haven't got a date for bringing this forward to council or not. I'm going to be learning more about this at the planning directors meeting on Thursday, and I can take a closer look and see whether some of these strategies, how they're currently addressed in the city, whether they are policies in the comprehensive plan, whether they're addressed as being part of membership with Arch, or whatever those issues may be. I just haven't had a chance to take a look.
That's fine.
And report back.
But if when you find out something, you can let us know, so we have an idea of how we want to do this.
When does the vote need to be made? When was the vote going to be taken on this?
April 22nd?
Oh, plenty of time, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of time.
It sounds complex enough. I'd like to have some more information.
I'm on the board of directors of Sound Cities, and they're looking to adopt its final position on April 15th. So we have a little bit of time.
You do. And there's also the option, if you're interested in having somebody from Sound Cities come to give a presentation, I think I read that they're willing to do that as well.
They're willing to do that, yes. So if you want to schedule that, I will let them know tomorrow, Wednesday when I'm at a board meeting. Or we can do that before.
I get a little bit more information. I understand we'll need to report back so that you
Perfect.
get direction from your colleagues.
Thank you very much. All right, one couple of other small things, and so we had talked the homeless issue. I'm going to be representing Kenmore on Friday at the End Veterans Homelessness Conference down in Seattle with HUD. We are just working with the county and doing what the county's doing and supporting the county's efforts, because we're too small of an entity to really do stuff ourselves, but we can be a big support in the county. I'm going to go to Veterans Administration tomorrow to help recruit disabled for the canoe and kayak program. So we're going to be working with a number of disabled vets and getting them interested in coming up here and becoming more active on the water. Good meetings in Olympia last week. I talked with Paulette and Frocht about ecology, and I don't know how many of you read that letter today that ecology said, we're not doing anything for asking for any extra money. We're going to study this issue a little bit longer. Paulette and I got into a long conversation about it, and it turns out that I believe we also got a copy of the letter. And he didn't get the letter in the legislature. It came to his office, which was, he found quite surprising, and he was not very pleased about it. And that's all I have. So with that, we're adjourned.